the laws of primacy are real. So what they see in lesson 5, when you go and do your syllabus and you're doing, you do your ops and effects of controls, you're straight and level, you're turning and you're climbing and descending. Next thing you do stalls. It's the fifth lesson that you do. So what they experience there and what they see there is going to stick with them all the way through. It's very, very hard to undo the knowledge that they think that they have.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 191 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. A podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, my name's Trent Robinson, I'm your host, and welcome to another great episode. Big one today, a bit of an interview, so I won't carry on too much, but just a reminder, I have some free digital logbooks to give away to some lucky listeners. If you want to get your hands on one of those, thanks to Pilot Logbook AU, they will provide a code for a free commercial professional download. All you need to do is tag myself, the Trent Robinson Aviation Instagram page, and tag me in a photo of you enjoying the podcast, wherever that might be, a video of you listening to the podcast, or just a video of yourself talking about how the podcast has helped you, or if you don't want to do any videos or photos, write me something and email that to me, tag me, whatever, and I will draw 10 lucky winners. I was going to do the 20th of December. I thought, why not? Let's do the 24th. So open till the 24th of December. Get those entries in now, and I will announce those winners just after Christmas for the next episode. Fantastic digital logbook, and a lot of you have already purchased a copy. It's not made by myself, but I purchased it myself, and a supporter of it, and can offer you a discount as well. So check the link description for that and get yourself a copy as well. Also, the Pilot Nav Bags have been fantastic. I've just bought another one for somebody, and they are a really fantastic product as well. Again, link description. You can purchase one there and get a fantastic discount, $10 off. Probably a bit late for Christmas now, but definitely worthwhile looking at. They're made for pilots by pilots, and it is just perfect for the GA light bag. Fits under the seat and everything. So definitely check that out, guys. It is a really, really good product. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical areas of aviation safety, upset prevention and recovery training. UPRT Australia, located in Brisbane, is the only academy in Asia Pacific dedicated solely to this specialty. No licensed training, just pure focused skills that can save lives. Loss of control in flight remains the leading cause of fatal accidents worldwide, affecting pilots of every level, every background and every type. That's why UPRT training, recognised by ICAO and regulators across the globe, is such an essential building block in modern pilot development. UPRT Australia tailors its programs from RAOs all the way through to multi-crew A2PL holders, combining theory, practical handling and scenario-based training to ensure pilots, their families and passengers do not become part of a loss of control in flight statistic. The mission is simple: improve safety across the entire industry and make loss of control incidents and accidents a thing of the past. Back in 2023, I spoke with our guests about UPRT as a whole, and today we're going to talk specifically about stalling and stalling accidents. So please welcome back UPRT Australia Director Shane Tobin and Head of Operations Jeremy Miller. G'day, guys.
Hey, Trent.
G'day, Trent. Good to be back.
Fantastic to have you back. And so 2023 February we last spoke, and we said, yep, we'll definitely do this again. And here we are. Well, more than 2 years later. We've seen each other a lot in between, but I didn't realize it was so long ago. So definitely overdue for having a chat and talking about important discussions.
Yeah, mate, it's we're still seeing the same stuff out there, so it's good to catch up. We're always happy to see you on the outside, mate. But yeah, great to be back here and talk about what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, magic. Well, before we start, I think it's just prudent, just quickly. We just obviously received some horrible news the other week with the passing of Eddie Sieve, with the member of the formation team, and that. And Jeremy, do you just want to just let us know roughly, what happened there and where things are at, and just a little tribute to Eddie before we move on?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Trent. Look, Eddie was an integral part of Freedom Formation. He was the one who brought Freedom Formation together in the first place back in 2022 in preparation basically for the Pacific Air Show in 2023. So he will be a huge hole to fill for the team. As for what actually happened, look, that's still under investigation by the ATSB, so it's probably a little bit premature to actually comment on that at this stage. We have our theories, but yeah, I wouldn't want to stipulate before the reports come out.
No, that's absolutely fine. And look, it's just a horrible accident, and it reminds us all, how all this sort of stuff we're going to talk about today and just due vigilance is so important. We're out there having fun all the time, but things can change so quickly. If you want to as well, guys, the episode 129, I had the pleasure of interviewing Eddie and Jeremy and the others of the team about what they're doing there, and they'll be you're going to be at the Pacific Air Show again coming up, displaying as a team
next year. Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely be there.
Washed away.
Yeah, that is true if we have no more cyclones. But we will definitely be there as a team as a tribute to Eddie.
Yeah.
And so we are forging forward, and we've got some new stuff planned as well, which should be pretty cool.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, let's get on to what we wanted to talk about today, which is UPRT as a whole, but really focusing in on some more specific applications that we promised we'd do 2 years ago, and that is really in the area of stalling and spin training. So the VFR syllabus, for those that aren't aware, this is sort of what we used to use. There was an older VFR syllabus book, which, funnily enough, if you look at the instructor training guide that we've got today, is almost identical in terms of reading and writing, because look, a stall is still a stall. It doesn't change just because it's 2025. But the stalling content of what was taught then versus what we now have in the MOS is there are some differences, and it seems that some of these practices are slowly starting to slide since Part 61 was introduced in 2014. Did you want to just sort of touch on that, and then we'll sort of get into some of the things we're starting to see as a result, and then how UPRT fits into that?
Yeah, I guess we have we're in the fortunate position to be flying with a lot of pilots from a lot of different backgrounds. Everything from guys who've just got their basic licenses, we're flying with recreational certificate holders, right the way through to airline pilots. Okay, and we're seeing them in a UPRT context, but also doing tail endorsements, aerobatics, formation, that sort of thing. So we get to see some of their other general flying, and we've noticed over the last number of years, we are starting to see more and more pilots who really aren't comfortable when it comes to stalling, which to us really highlights a lack of understanding of what the aircraft's actually doing, and a minimalistic approach to their training. So why that's occurring, I could certainly stipulate, and we could talk about that for quite a while. But it seems like the basic skill sets are gradually reducing.
Yeah, and Shane, what are you seeing in the airline industry?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, say that again.
What are you seeing with your side of things, and especially just for those that don't know? So Shane's in the airlines, and Jeremy's was more the GA context. But yeah, are you seeing similar things there?
Still very much the same, Trent. And that's the thing, is that the laws of primacy are real. So what they see in lesson 5, when you go and do your syllabus and you're doing, you do your ops and effects of controls, your straight and level, you're turning and you're climbing and descending. Next thing you do stalls. It's the fifth lesson that you do. So what they experience there and what they see there is going to stick with them all the way through. It's very, very hard to undo the knowledge that they think that they have, or the skill set that they think that they have. And we only have to go through the MOS and look at some of the stuff that's in the MOS that instructors are teaching with the view to being compliant with their either ops manual, what they've been taught before, and with what PASA says is required to be taught from a stalling perspective. And we can see why this is the case. So it's really important. And one of the things I'll just jump in here as well, from a greater UPRT perspective, which is obviously targeted more towards more advanced sort of loss of control in flight. Now, a stall is a loss of control. It is an aircraft upset. But from a loss of control in flight accident perspective, greater than 2/3 of all loss of control in flight accidents either result from or the aircraft being stalled at the point of impact. So stall awareness and stall recovery is a huge component of loss of control prevention and recovery. So if you don't have those basics to start off with, that's going to carry through with you. And when it actually counts on the day, you're not going to have the skill set or the knowledge to be able to recover. Well, first of all, prevent it and recover from an incipient event. But if the event does escalate to a full loss of control, then it's just not going to work for you.
Yeah, I think that's important. Just the other day, I was flying with someone on my GA transition course, and I always just, because I'm curious, so I always just say, all right, show me a stall and a stall recovery, however you've been taught. And the mix of apprehension, confidence, fear, technique is just absolutely mind-blowing. Not just that, but the other day someone said, which sort of recovery would you like? Some instructors like a pre-stall recovery, some like a post-stall recovery, some want this, some that. And I'm like, wow, that's getting crazy. How have we, do you think we've got to this point now where we've gone from what a stall is and how to recover from it to all these different connotations?
Look, I think firstly, it comes down to instructors, and it comes down to instructors understanding and being comfortable with handling the aircraft at high angles of attack and around the stall. I've flown with a number of instructors who, you ask them to do a stall and they start to sweat, and they sweat more than they should be. Like a stall is an aerodynamic condition of flight that is very easily controllable, but a lot of instructors don't actually understand it. Okay, and I think this ultimately comes back to how we as an industry deliver the training, because one of the biggest issues that I've got with how we as an industry deliver stall training is that during, say, your typical 150-hour commercial pilot course, okay, a student will go out numerous times during the course at different stages and they will conduct stalling. Okay, and the stalling is taught as an exercise. Okay, you close the throttle, you gradually raise the nose. There's the symptoms of the approach to stall. There's the actual stall. Good, let's recover straight away. So instructors teach your students to recover at the first onset of the stall, thinking that they're actually doing a good thing. Now, the issue that I've got with that is when you look at a student's entire training during a 150-hour commercial, and you ask yourself the question, how long have they actually spent beyond the critical angle of attack? I would say, if they're lucky, 30 seconds. Okay, and this is, I believe, one of the reasons why we continue to see stalling accidents, because pilots aren't recognizing what the aircraft is actually doing with only 30 seconds worth of training.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I said, because obviously when I let them stall and they don't really do it right, and I go, okay, so what was it in your head that told you I'm stalled and now's the time to recover? And then they go, buff it. I go, no, that's the pre-stall. They go, stall warning. No, that's the pre-stall. And they're always looking for a nose drop. Meanwhile, we're sitting here with the nose up, sinking away, stalled condition, and they're not understanding that. Like the Cessna is usually what we're using. Incredibly stable aircraft. It wants to keep flying. It doesn't always nose drop. Half the time you have to hoik it up. You remember when we were using 172s, you really got to encourage it at the end to try and get it to perform to the nose drop symptom that we all sort of teach. And it's not what happens half the time.
Look, absolutely, Trent, and you know the actual recognition of a stall is not something that's actually very well taught, I believe, by the industry in general. But also the precursor to the stall. What are the approach to stall symptoms? And this is one of the questions we always ask as part of our UPRT course, and we actually list things up on the whiteboard, and students will say high nose attitude, low air speeds, sloppy controls, low power setting, you know, maybe a stall warning horn, possibly like buffered, possibly it's going to be quiet because of the low power setting. And then we turn around and say to them, okay, that's all well and good, but what they've described there is, for the most part, symptoms of slow speed flight. Not necessarily symptoms of the approach to stall.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we know from a lot of the accidents that we've seen over the last 10 years that involve stalls that most of those symptoms of slow speed flight aren't actually there at the time of the accident. You know, so students being taught to look for the symptoms of slow speed flight as the symptoms of an approaching stall, which, you know, we as an industry, we teach stalling from low speed flight. And the reason why we do that is because it's the least exciting that we can make it. Okay, we want the student to come back the next week and have another lesson. Okay, so we don't want to scare the crap out of them. So we do some slow speed flight.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
and that's what I was going to say. The irony is we seem to have gone from instructor training where we go, this is where we lose the most students because they get scared, to now the instructors have joined that that fraternity, and even then become head of operations as well, which is even more concerning. And God forbid for examiners, because it's something that everyone's got to have confidence in flying the aircraft out to that envelope rather than, you know, where they are now. And everyone seems to have brought everything right into, let's just stay within that 45-degree angular bank, 10-degree, 15-degree nose up sort of area, and you know, don't go outside that. And I included in our notes that, you know, in the VFR syllabus, we had the control aeroplane at slow speeds, and we just sat there and just on the buffet, on the stall, just pre-stall, I've had people so nervous about that. I said, well, we're perfectly in control. Everything's going to be fine.
And one of the things, if you look at the next element within that, the execute advanced manoeuvres within the MOS, where it talks about enter and recover from a stall, the second point that it says is recognise airframe buffet and control ineffectiveness symptoms. So the control ineffectiveness is a symptom of slow speed flight. You can have fully responsive and effective controls right up to a stall.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to get back into that. So what's happened then, do you think, with, do you feel that this is a VFR syllabus which I still feel is fairly descriptive, certainly up the CPL syllabus, but the MOS has absolutely captured things beyond that, because that we did all kind of make up. But have we overprescribed things, or, you know, due to some of the accidents that have happened, like, you know, with the spinning, we've gone to spin prevention rather than spin recovery. We used to do a spin demonstration on the way back from a stalling lesson before solo circuits. You know, my view on that is, again, we used to have 152 Aerobats and Tomahawks and things that could do spinning, and they were the staple trainer. But as we've now moved into Diamonds and other aircraft that are not capable of that, the syllabus has changed to suit the training platform rather than the training platform being selected to be fit for purpose of what we're actually trying to achieve here.
Yeah, look, that's very true, Trent. But I think also the problem that we are seeing is that, well, one of the things that I say to a lot of people about the aviation industry is there's one thing that we're very good at doing, and we're very good at not innovating. Okay, we are teaching essentially the same sort of stuff today as what we did sort of 20, 30 years ago when we all learned to fly. But we're still seeing the same type of accidents. Okay, now the VFR syllabus has been replaced by the Part 61 manual standards. There's been some modifications to that. But if anything, we're teaching, you know, less to do with stalling these days than what we did back in the day, as you said. But another common thing that I come across quite a lot, that I think we can do a lot better as an industry, is how we teach wing drop stalling. Now, this has been a fairly sort of hot topic over the last sort of 6-7 years, especially after the Diamond VA40 accident up here in Queensland, just south of Brisbane and Bow Desert, Mike the Par Mike. And the HSB came out with some recommendations for wing drop stall training. The Part 61 manual standards was amended. But one of the considerations for us when we look at a lot of aircraft accidents that involve wing drop stalling is that even though these pilots have gone through and they have, been taught the use of rudder to correct a wing drop and all the stuff that everyone gets trained, in this critical phase of flight just prior to an accident, they're not using those skill sets. Okay. And so, I started asking the question, why? Why are we not seeing the skills that are practiced during training actually being utilized to prevent these accidents from occurring? And I realized that the first thing that a pilot loses, okay, when they're approaching one of these upsets is their situational awareness. Okay. If they knew that they were approaching a stall, they would be doing something about it prior to the aircraft stalling. Okay, so they've found themselves, in a stall, potentially at low level. Okay, the aircraft started to drop a wing. Okay, so the aircraft's now starting to roll. They don't recognize that they've stalled the aircraft, and so that they're applying aileron to try and correct it, as per what we'd normally do in normal flights. So, teaching use of rudder to prevent a wing drop and to correct back to wings level, although rudder is used to control auto rotations, which is really what we're talking about here, and that is correct. When you look at a real situation, it really doesn't apply. So what we should be teaching, I believe, is that if the aircraft's ever doing something that you don't recognize or understand what it's doing or why, first thing you want to do is relax your back pressure, reduce angle of attack. Okay, you reduce angle of attack, all of your flight controls will now work.
Absolutely.
You can roll back to wings level to your heart's content. Okay, so as I said, although use of rudder to control auto rotations is technically correct, from a practical application perspective, we're just not seeing pilots do that.
And that again is feeding into the VFR syllabus, mentioning the word stall stick position and no sign of it at all in the current mods, to the point where most people have never heard of it, never understand it, and as soon as you show them, why are we filling the windscreen with ground in a stall recovery? Because again, when are you most likely to stall? It's going to be close to the ground. It's not going to be at 4,000 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more than likely going to be when you're in a low energy state. Okay, so a low airspeed in the circuit area, base to finals, after takeoff, on approach to land, those sort of situations. Experiencing a stall in cruising flight is a very, very rare event. Not impossible, but very rare.
No. And do you think this is part of the issue that we train straight and level stalls for the most part, but really that's not the time you're going to be in a stall instance? It's going to be the turning on the final, the overbanking, over shooting, and then they're obviously the gnarly ones, aren't they? Because they're the ones that are going to get the flick, the whoa, what's happened kind of response.
Yeah, look, absolutely. We're training the skill sets, but we're not applying them to real world scenarios. And that is something I think we could be doing much better as an industry.
Yeah. All right. So let's just touch on that for a second. So I mentioned earlier about the lack of appropriate aircraft for training, be whatever reasons, be it we don't want to damage a diamond on gravel runways, or it's just not spinnable or whatever. I'm not picking on diamond, but that's obviously one of the main aircraft that's moved into the training environment. Do we necessarily need to be a school that can teach all of these things, or is this where the likes of you guys come in, where for certain elements of training we either partner up with somebody on the airfield if that's possible, or this sort of training happens somewhere else? I think that there's this idea that I'm a flight school, so I do everything here, even though I might not have the right equipment, the right instructor experience, all that. Or do you really think we need to start specializing a little bit more, so we're going to people who actually know what they're doing and have the staff retention with these skill sets to do all this properly, rather than add to the lack of instructors knowing what they're really doing and just doing the bare bone basic training delivery? Loaded question.
But I think if you liken it to the world of medicine, okay, you go to a GP, you've got a basic problem, you go to a GP, and the GP can fix a lot of things. That's your basic flight school, and they're well experienced. They've got a great skill set. They've got the tools to be able to do what they can do. But there are things that a general practitioner cannot do. They don't have the skill sets. They don't have the equipment, which is why you go and see an orthopedic surgeon. So we've got to get out of the mindset that yes, an instructor or a flight school has to be able to deliver everything. There are some things that a flight school just cannot do. Now, a diamond, we're talking about diamonds again because they're so prevalent, and they're a fantastic training aeroplane. They're very stable. They've got good economics, and we can understand why flight schools use them. But there are things that they can't do. So instead of trying to force the aircraft into trying to do something that it's not certified to do, which then breaks down your levels of safety and increases your risk. Or the other option that most schools are doing is not teaching it at all, so that they're not being exposed to that increased level of risk, which is a smart thing to do from a risk management perspective, but it's not doing the right thing by the student, which is why you need to find someone who has the appropriate aircraft type, has the appropriate instructors, and has the appropriate experience to be able to take those basics, which are done in those first 5, 6, 10 lessons. That's really important. That's the foundational knowledge. But what we can't do is then rely on that basic foundational knowledge to then just hold them for the rest of their career. We need to be able to build on those fundamentals that have been taught in the Diamond, in the Cirrus, in the Warrior, and then take it to that next level in an appropriate environment under an appropriate risk mitigation program, which can then safely take the trainee to the more advanced manoeuvres, which then actually show them how those real world events happen in complete safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, I think it goes right the way through the GA, but through to the airlines. We just have to look at, the incidents that are happening with the MAX, with the false information data, and that what's it doing if you haven't had that GA military sort of upside down background. Like even Jeremy, we know as well as any that aerobatics was just such a great tool. So many of us back in our day, we got our GFPT, now the RPL, and then we went and did aerobatic rating. Comfortable with the sky pointing the wrong way, energy management, hands-on controls, feeling that energy dissipation, unloading wings, all those sort of skill sets, and just none of that happens now.
No, absolutely, Trent. I mean, it's flying a three-dimensional vehicle in a three-dimensional manner, not a three-dimensional vehicle in a two-dimensional manner, which is how we train students. So, look, absolutely, aerobatics is fantastic. I'd love to see aerobatics incorporated into the basic syllabus at every flying school, but I understand that's not practically or financially possible. Any sort of advanced training beyond the basics, be it aerobatics or tail wheel or formation or upset recovery training, will all improve a pilot's skill set to make them safer.
Yeah. Shane, I'll ask you this one because it sort of ties into your neck of the woods a bit more. So MCC, we had people with simulators and the benefit of jumping in a simulator and doing a little bit of multi-crew kind of stuff, but it wasn't in the syllabus. Therefore, it was an additional expense. So only really people that could afford it did it. Now it's in the syllabus. Everyone's doing it because they have to do it. Should we go back to having some of this training brought back into the syllabus so it is mandated, do you think? Or should it still be an optional extra? Because again, if I don't have to spend the money, I can see the benefit, but I just can't afford it.
Look, I think there's a way that we can get benefit out of mandating this, but by the same thing, so long as we mandate the right stuff. So what are we mandating? So from an MCC perspective, that brings in, and that's some of the things that we discuss in our more advanced courses here, is that dealing with an emergency scenario in a multi-crew environment is very different to a single pilot scenario. So working on those concepts of intervention, of emergency language, of trying to get across that the pilot monitoring, for example, might be, they're generally less cognitively tied up in the monitoring of the aeroplane than the pilot flying. So they've got a little bit more anticipation space to be able to see things going wrong. So how do they talk up to the pilot flying to make them more aware that they might be approaching a stall and they're just not aware of it? But the next thing is, how to intervene if they don't understand how to recognize if the pilot flying is getting cognitively overloaded, and making those appropriate interventions. The simulators, yes. So simulators are a really, really good tool. Even the full fidelity level D full flight simulators with full extended envelope training UPRT capability are a fantastic tool, but they still do not have the same effect on the pilots as doing this in an aeroplane.
Absolutely, the dynamics are so
quite a
different.
number of, we get a lot of pilots who come through here who have done UPRT or stalling in a level D simulator, but no matter what happens in a simulator, and the simulators are, as I say, they're fantastic. The graphics are fantastic. The feedback is real, but they know that even if they really, hack it up, that in 10 minutes time, they're going to be going and having a cup of tea.
And do you think that there's still that mentality that this can't hurt me?
That it still can't hurt me. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we can push the sim freeze and everything will stop. Whereas when they are suddenly confronted with real G-load, the simulators cannot replicate G-load. But now they've got real G-load, they've got real buffet. Now the aeroplane is really doing something that they were not expecting. And they've got a windscreen full of real ground. They have a very, very different physiological and psychological response to what they do in the simulator.
Yeah.
So yes, simulators are a great tool, but it's not everything. And this is why when you talk about UPRT training as a whole, ICAO says in chapter 1 of their manual on UPRT that academics, simulator, and on aircraft training is the ultimate training tool.
Yeah, it all needs to roll together.
Why we need to look at. We need to put it all together into a real program that actually fits those three different medium.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like I've just got the basic desktop elite simulator that I use for my VFR training, but I honestly think I can get just as much response as a full level D motion sim. Like I do a gradual attitude indicator, fail and topple, and they don't recognize it, and then they just sit there and they just watch everything unwind. Of course, ignoring what 5 instruments collaborating together are saying, and put all their faith into the attitude indicator and hit the ground and do nothing. They're just so shocked by it. So we don't need big, expensive tools.
That's the mental startle.
Yep.
and mental surprise.
Yep.
And Jeremy talk a little bit more about surprise later, because but once surprise kicks in, and we're talking about the cognitive surprise, your attentional focus diminishes incredibly. And if you have not been trained in that, it is absolutely incapacitating.
Yeah. What's it doing? What's going on? So mate, don't want to do something. Close the throttle, rolling. Oh, yeah. But again, it hasn't been introduced in training. It's like, right, today we're going to do unusual attitude recovery, and this is what's going to happen, and then we do it. But it's lacking the build-up, which is, really what UPRT's aiming to roll into it, isn't it?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So do we need to be able to recover from a stall, or is just stall recognition and stall prevention enough?
Well, stall prevention is ultimately the end goal.
Absolutely.
So yes, I think we could reinvent how we do stall training to spend more time looking at the stall prevention. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the times the symptoms of slow speed flight are taught as the symptoms of an approach to stall, where at the end of the day, there's only 3 things that you're going to see every single time. You're going to be pulling back on the stick, or have the stick after neutral, stall warning horn, or possibly a stall warning light if you're in an older Cherokee, and a little bit of light buffet. Okay, those are the 3 symptoms of the approach to stall. So we spend pretty much a flight and a half during our 4-flight UPRT course, really just highlighting the approach to stall symptoms, okay, and getting people to recognize them, not just in straight ahead power off stalls, but during turns and climbs and descents and all sorts of different attitudes. So I think we could be focusing on that a lot more. But I think ultimately students need to understand what a stall actually looks like, okay, how their aircraft actually behaves in the stall, okay, and we have quite a large variation across the basic training fleet, like your Mars Bar Wing Cherokee 140 is going to install very differently to a Diamond DA40. So students need to actually go out and install. They need to be able to understand what the stall actually looks like and sounds like and feels like in their particular aircraft. So I don't think we can get away from that completely, but we really should be focusing more on the approach to stall symptoms and the prevention of the stall before it actually occurs.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly it, isn't it? It's just to understand that we're in that zone doesn't mean we're going to stall. It's just be aware. Leading into, I'll ask people, what angle of bank were you taught to use, climbing out from after takeoff? And they usually say for your 15, 20 degrees. And I'll say, why? Oh, because we might stall. And I'm like, do we stall because of angle of bank? Well, why is it? Oh, but no, because you're pulling back and you're going to hit the accelerated stall or the critical angle. It's not about the bank, but it's a zone where, you might be at slightly more risk, sure, but it's just this understanding and comprehension that, are we spending enough time briefing, stalling before we go flying? And does the instructor even have the full understanding and knowledge of what's going on to pass that on?
Yeah, well, that I guess is really the ultimate question we need to ask ourselves as an industry, and what support is or are instructors getting post their instruct or having completed their instructor rating when they're delivering this training at schools. And as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong with this, but most flying schools for junior instructor, they only get to fly with a head of operations once every 12 months as they're required to do. So where's the instructor professional development around this sort of stuff?
And that's a great point. And this is what I bring up often, that ideally ab initio training should be delivered by the likes of us. But unfortunately, we're busy with all the other stuff that the junior instructors can't do yet. And so that rarely happens. And this is all, again, still part of the problem.
I think a well-supported and well-mentored junior instructor, can deliver this training well. Yeah. But they need the support.
But it's not really happening much at the moment because everyone's off doing their own thing, sadly. And this is what I keep saying. We all used to be in the same instructor room. We used to talk about stuff, and the senior instructors would tell us, what are you doing? No, do this instead. And you'd get that mentoring and help whether you asked for it or not. Whereas now all the senior staff are off in their own offices and the juniors are down spreading misinformation, and they're not getting that support that they otherwise need unless they're very lucky. I get this complaint from junior instructors all the time. And again, it's not a knock on junior instructors. We've all been one. It's just some of us have been more fortunate to have that support around us. We all have to start somewhere. But it's also understanding the instructor training, which you're going to be doing assessing soon as well, to make sure that why are we actually teaching stalling in the first place? And part of it even is just the entry into the stall, just gaining height, stall it, recover it. I said, yeah, but we're also preparing for the entry and hold off into a landing, but maintaining level attitude. It's not about doing a zoom climb, get the stall over and done with. You're missing the whole point if that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's it. And taking a step back and looking at what we teach and why as an industry, I think would be a very, very good exercise, because at the end of the day, we've been teaching people the same way for 80, 90, 100 years, and we've been crashing aircraft the same way for that same amount of time. So there's got to be a better way of doing things. And taking a step back and looking at what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think a lot of the times, the why behind the what has been lost, through from generation to generation of instructor. So, instructors are teaching things these days and they don't actually understand why they're actually teaching it a certain way.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Let's have a look at one of the recent accidents. So the Piper Cherokee Lance at Shell Harbour just recently, that was in October. It's still preliminary investigation, but there's a few things that I think are reasonably obvious there. But did you want to have a bit of a chat about that and how it rolls into the sort of stuff that you guys are doing there?
Yeah, so from what we know of the accident so far, from what the ATSB have released, the Piper Lance was taking off on the westerly runway at Shell Harbour, Wollongong. It's runway 26 or 27, I can't remember which. And eyewitnesses reported that as the aircraft rotated, the engine started to run rough. Okay, the pilot then commenced a left turn at a height of about 50 feet. Got to a maximum height of around 100 feet, at which time, after about 120 degrees of heading change, the angle of bank was seen to increase, and unfortunately the aircraft contacted the ground with a less than desirable outcome. So when we really look at what actually happened during that accident, and we look at the pilot's decision-making process, the rough running engine, just as the aircraft rotated, well, they were less than halfway down the runway. Okay, so they still had over half the runway ahead of them. Okay, and beyond the end of the runway, there were basic grass fields. Okay, so there was a suitable area with which to land the aircraft. Yet the pilot made the decision at the time to begin a left turn, which we can only assume was in an effort to get back onto the runway that he was taking off from. Okay, during the left turn, it's climbed to a maximum height of about 100 feet, at which time the angle of bank was seen to increase, which probably wasn't a conscious decision made by the pilot. That, to me, would indicate a potential stall with a wing drop, and then the aircraft contacted the ground. So the decision-making process, when we look at it from that pilot, really didn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, why would you start a left turn at such a low altitude when there is runway remaining ahead of you? Okay, when there's grass fields ahead of you. Okay, what was the purpose of turning left? Okay, rather than just landing straight ahead. So that pilot would have definitely experienced what we call startle and surprise. Okay, now startle is the typical response we have when we hear a door slam, or there's a sudden loud noise, maybe our partner jumps out from behind the fridge and scares the crap out of us. Okay, that initial jump is our startle response. Okay, surprise, on the other hand, is when something occurs that is within the capability of what could happen in our environment, but we aren't expecting it. Okay, and both startle and surprise can cause an interruption of our cognitive processes and a focus on that new item within our environment. Okay, so from this pilot's perspective, the rough running engine was probably his focus at the time. And so his awareness of height and speed and what he was doing with his control column and configuration of the aircraft, whether the gear was up or down, power setting, all that sort of jazz, his awareness of all of that probably went out the window. And this is one of the things we see is killing a lot of pilots. Okay, the fact that they're not recognizing that they've experienced startle, they're not recognizing when they've had surprise, and they're not recognizing when they're losing their situational awareness as to what's happening around them.
Yeah. Shane, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, look, I would just agree with what Jeremy said, mate. You know, it's one thing I want to make very, very clear to the listeners is we're not casting judgment on the pilot.
Absolutely not.
We're trying to understand why an otherwise highly trained professional pilot who has by all reports did well in their flight training and you know, in their license renewals and passed everything that we all have to pass every couple of years, why they suddenly made a decision that they would otherwise not do. And what we're seeing are all the hallmarks of cognitive lock, which is the surprise event taking over their mental processes. And this can happen to anybody. And as I said before, how this works to different people is going to be different for each person. So one of the things that's really important for people to understand, or pilots to understand, is how they are likely to respond, so that they understand within themselves that they're having this response, and then take the appropriate steps to unload themselves, just as they should unload the aeroplane, decrease the angle of bank. We need to unload our mental capacity. And how to do that, if you haven't been trained, it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
And so the pilot did what the training that they had received designed his response to do.
Yeah.
So he responded in the way that his training designed him to respond. And that's why we need to look really honestly at what we are training, because every pilot who has perished or suffered severe injury or lost an aircraft, and all the passengers that have perished along with them, have perished with the training that we have delivered them as an industry.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You can just say they didn't want to do that. They were doing everything in their capability to, fly that airplane, recover that airplane. But it is the experience, knowledge, training that they draw on that then can, have a massive influence on the outcome. I mean,
and that's something that Jeremy will attest to as well, is that what we see with people who come in and do some more advanced maneuvers with us is that they sit down in the classroom and they sit there and they go, oh yeah, I know how to do this and I've done this before. And then they experience something just slightly different to what they were expecting. So they experience that surprise cognitive response. And all of a sudden they start doing things that they themselves don't even understand what they're doing or why. And it's not until they get back in the classroom afterwards and you go, why did you do that? And they actually will look at you, and if they're being honest, they will say, I don't know. I don't know why I did that. That's not what I would have expected myself to do. And so we really need to be looking a lot harder at the non-technical skills that go along with this basic flight training, as well as the stick and run.
Yeah, and that I think is the biggest thing, and this is what I keep banging on about with scenario-based training, and UPRT is very much involving that, because it's not just talking about the sterile event or whatever. It's the lead up, the build up, the event itself, and then either the correct or incorrect recovery. Either way, learning takes place, and we can review it, fix it, have another crack later, but it's not going to be the same thing, because then it's just going to be a basic rote response. We're going to put a little twist on it, because that's the only way we can truly see whether you're starting to get it and understand. And just in-flight emergencies, I'll say, smoke coming out of the engine cowling now, what are you going to do? And they start grabbing for QRHs and setting up glides and all that. And like, no, fuel off, fuel cut off, shut the engine down, nose down, try and smother it out, looking for somewhere to land, and then if not, gliding for the last 500 feet. If you're going to try and glide this airplane from 4,000 feet for 5, 6, 7 minutes, you're gone. You haven't got time for that. And they're like eyes wide open, like, holy cow, I've never even done this before. We need more of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely, Trent. As you said, that's taking that practical knowledge and putting it into real world scenarios.
Yeah, even in simulation, I think you can build it up and get that response. So yeah, look, we've covered quite a bit there, guys, and I think this is sort of part of the process. Now, we have talked before, and I've talked with Paul and a few others about startle response, UPRT training, loss of control in flight being brought back into the syllabus, and I think we're getting pretty close. But unfortunately, the person responsible in CASA has now retired, and we've sort of stalled a little bit ourselves in sorry for the pun, but the implementation of this. Do you guys know where we're at with that, and what's on the horizon, and how we can sort of bring this in that will make it trained and all that? And I guess you can't say everything. I appreciate that, but is there still hope that we're going to be able to get this in, and then good training for instructors to make sure it's all done properly, etc.?
Look, I think the person responsible previously at the regulator was a huge supporter, huge proponent, and to be fair, he'd put in more than his effort, more than required in his time. So I still keep in very close contact with him, talking about how to better train, and certainly looking at our syllabus and what we can do to improve. If it's part of that constant review and improvement process internally here. From a regulatory perspective, I think, being brutally honest, and we've got to give the regulator a bit of slack here. They are incredibly under-resourced as for what they should do, for what they are basically tasked to do, and that goes probably further up the chain, up to the minister responsible, that they need to be providing more resources to the regulator to do the things. So I think that they're just doing what they can. So I think what we need to look at from an industry perspective is how we can take the proactive steps without waiting for regulation. If we wait for regulation, then we'll be waiting a very, very long time in a lot of cases. And we need to be looking ourselves as an industry and gathering together and banding our own resources. All the resources that we need to do this and to do this well are already available. They're already there. We've got associations, we've got guidance material from ICAO, from IATA, from the FAA. CAS has already put out ACs, and all we need to do is look and see how we can do this better. So in Australia, I know we've got the Australian Flight Training Industry Association, and from a UPRT perspective, we can also announce that we've also rebooted what they call the UPRT Association International, or UPRTA. That's a global industry association with specialty from all over the world, on that, we've got teams who are looking at airlines, at flight schools, at individual operators, specialised GA, UPRT, and in that space, I've actually been selected as the Vice President for GA Training International for UPRT, for UPRTA. So we've got the resources available. The information is there. The specialty knowledge is there. All we need to do is have a little bit of a hard think about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to best implement this. And we don't have to wait for regulation. The one thing I will caution is trying to think that you can teach a UPRT course just because you've read a book or you've listened to this podcast or you've seen some stuff on YouTube. That doing UPRT requires an incredible amount of work, and the background work that even with the experience of myself teaching UPRT in the airline space, Jeremy's 20 years of teaching emergency manoeuvre training, our basic UPRT course took us 1 year to develop, and that was basically full time for us to do that. It's an incredible amount of work. Now, not scaring people off doing the work. We encourage people to do the work. We encourage them to get educated and to take an interest in this and take a vested interest in this as well. And I've been pinged by people in industry saying that I'm a UPRT zealot, or I'm a UPRT. I forget what the actual term was, but at the time I took a little bit of offence to it. But now I actually wear it as a badge of honour. That yes, there is. We do have to do this correctly. A purist was the term that was used. You're a UPRT purist, and that's fine. Right? Now, I am a purist because it needs to be done correctly. Because if we get it incorrect, we're not doing a disservice and a misjustice to the trainers and to the trainees. And we're setting them up with an incomplete knowledge set, an incomplete skill set, and a false sense of security. And that doesn't do anyone any favours. So I don't think we need to wait for regulation, but we need to make sure that whoever is developing this and delivering this needs to be doing it correctly and referencing it to the appropriate material that's already out there.
Yeah. And I think that's important that we touched on that when we first talked, and just reiterating that UPRT is just not a new buzzword. It's not another name for aerobatics or unusual attitudes. It's a whole different kettle of fish. And, I would not go out and start trying to just teach a UPRT course tomorrow. I've made that very clear. Despite my background, it's not in that area. It's a specialty thing that I need to go and learn about properly to deliver it properly. And I really look forward to the day that might actually happen. But yeah, it's to do with everything that we're doing. I'm really keen, as I've said before, to go back to where we used to have the Safe Skies conference and then get all the CFIs, now who's together, all the CASA FOIs, where we really spitball this stuff and talk about it, swap stories, and we can, as an industry, 100% we can start doing this. We don't need to make it a mandatory thing in the syllabus in order to do it. We can teach outside the box. We can teach outside the syllabus, which many of us are already doing. and getting the recognition and reputations that we are because of that. And I think that's where we just got to keep leading by example to encourage others to do the same, and happy to help others to do the same, because this isn't about our company or that company or whatever being the best or whatever. It's about we're here to save lives. We're here to make sure we all go home at night, and the more of us doing that properly, the better and easier it's going to be to achieve that outcome. And we all know there's more than enough work and training out there to go around.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, Trent. And you hit the nail on the head there, mate. This is all about saving lives. And that's what Shane and I are sitting here on your podcast for, because we want to help pilots bring everyone home safely at the end of the day. If you experience an upset, you don't get a second chance. So we want to make sure pilots have the tools to get it right the first time. So it's not only about safety; it's all about professional development as aviators, and that doesn't just apply to airline pilots and commercial pilots. Okay, there's a lot of very professional recreational pilots out there and private pilots. Okay, so for anyone, doing this sort of training will make them a safer pilot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that we need to be all getting involved with, and I look forward to continuing to talk about it some more.
That's it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's a fantastic chat, and I think we've been all very restrained to sort of keep it within an hour slot. We could definitely go on far longer, but guys, where can people reach you if they want to try and do a bit of training with you?
Well, easiest way is through our website, uprt.com.au. There's contact information there and the contact form. So, yeah, drop us a line and we'll be in touch and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well that you don't have to be in Queensland to take advantage of your guys' services. You're happy to go on an adventure and bring the aircraft to you. And
yeah, look, absolutely happy to travel. In fact, speaking of that, we are planning a trip to Melbourne in early February next year.
That's
so
right.
we're planning on having both extras down in Moorabbin, working with our good friends at Moorabbin Flying Services, and offering UPRT for pilots in the Melbourne area.
Yeah, well, I'm going to Tassie in February. I might even try and swing by and say g'day. Try and work that in. That just dawned on me. And why not? If you're looking for a good little Christmas gift idea, mate, I believe you might have released the book a little while ago that might have something to do with flying close to other airplanes. You want to give that a quick plug as well, mate?
Yes. So I have written a book called Up Forward In. It's available at formation-flying.com. It's all about the art of formation flying. And as far as I can tell, it's the first one of its type in the world. Okay, there's plenty of manuals out there that tell you what to do. But the book Up Forward In explains the why behind the what. It's everything I've learned about formation flying over the last 20 years.
Yeah. And I think that's a great analogy. Like I keep saying, we're really good at teaching what, but no why, and there's no context to things. And it was really, I think, summarizing beautifully what we've been talking about today. And this, just the most simplest change to flight training we could probably make. It's just putting some more context to stuff as to why we're doing it, not just because the syllabus and the box says we've got to do it. So, I've got a copy. There's some fantastic photos and diagrams in there. I was happy to contribute a couple of pics to it, and definitely worth a read. So good on you, mate. And thank you guys for joining me again. It's been great, and I definitely look forward to catching up with both of you whenever that next opportunity is.
Always look forward to it, Trent.
Always a pleasure, mate.
Have a fantastic Christmas, and we'll talk soon, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Have a good new year and fly safe.
Cheers. Well, a big thank you to Jeremy and Shane again for joining me there, and a really great chat, and so much more to get into there. Definitely check out what they're doing, whether it's in Archie or down in Moorabbin in February. And I'm going to try and pop in and see them when I'm there, looking at doing a trip down to Tassie. I'm going to try and catch them on the way back. So if you're there, I might catch you around. All right, guys. Quick reminder about the competition. Get those entries in. Tag me in any way, shape or form that you're enjoying the podcast. Photos, videos, make it funny, make it serious, whatever you like. I'd love to see those coming. And in the meantime, stay safe, and please remember the golden rule: aviate, navigate, communicate. All right, everybody, take care. I'll see you soon.